we're doing today and yesterday and tomorrow is very important because major changes are occurring in this country, whether we like it or not. Let's just hope that we have something to say about the changes, because there will not be the maintaining of the status quo, because our country has lived beyond its means too long, and our country no longer can afford it. So we have to decide as a people. Congress, Washington, and our government is a reflection of the people. And when the Constitution was passed, John Adams was asked about, what the chances are we're maintaining this. He argued that it depended on the morals of the people. We have a free country. They gave us a, relatively free, or the best ever, not perfect, but he said that it will depend on the morals of the people rather than just the law of the land. Laws reflect the people. That reminds me of something I've often explained, with the right to life issue. I'm an OB doctor, delivered quite a few babies, and became very much engaged in the pro-life movement in the 1960s, when it was very illegal to commit an abortion. But during the 1960s, they were breaking the law and doing abortions, and even in the university where I was studying, they were doing it in defiance of the law. By 1973, the Supreme Court ruled over all states' rights. As a matter of fact, they ruled unconstitutional in state Texas law that protected the unborn, and they changed that. But it wasn't the law that made us immoral. It was the people's attitudes that changed that caused the government to change the law. So looking at it that way, yes, we can complain a whole lot about our government. We can complain about the Congress and the courts and the executive branch, and we should, because it is out of control. But ultimately, in a free society, it's up to us to set the moral standards and also hold the feet to the fire of those people who are in Washington to live up to their promises. And the number one promise that they make, everybody that goes there, is to make the promise that they obey the Constitution. We'd be a lot better off if they all did that. Of our free society, we had the freest and the best and the most prosperous society ever, and we have about allowed ourselves to let this slip by. But Jefferson had it right when he wrote the Declaration of Independence on where our rights come from. Our rights don't come from our government. Our rights come from our Creator, and that's where it starts. Our right to our life and our right to our liberty. If we have a responsibility of our own lives, then we also have this responsibility on how we use our liberty. Now, it, to me, is rather easy to calculate and say that, if you have a right to your life, it's a God-given life, and you have responsibilities to deal with your life, and that the government's there to protect your liberty. Under those conditions, you ought to be allowed to keep the fruits of your labor. That's what I would like to see. Based on moral principle, I think the worst tax you can have is the income tax. And someday maybe we'll see that day where we won't have an income tax once again. But the income tax is based on the assumption that even if they only take 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40%, and at times they've even taken more, the assumption is the government owns everything you earn, and then they will permit you to keep a certain percentage on their conditions. And that is the reason why I think it's such a bad tax. But the tax, even the tax that we have and the way it's collected, is the symptom. The real problem that we have to deal with is this concession to those who have run our government for so long, that they can do all the things that they're doing, that they can assume that we want them to police the world, that we believe in the entitlement system, that there should be transfer of wealth from one group to another. And as long as we accept that notion, we're going to have a government that's going to do exactly what they have been doing. But one of the flaws in this entitlement system is that they've taken what we believe as natural rights, the right to our life and our liberty and how precious life really is, and turn it around and say, well, we have to have a safety net. Government has to take care of people. Government has to protect them from cradle to grave, and entitlements become rights.
I don't believe that. I don't think people, just because they think they need something, they're entitled to it. It may give us an incentive to work harder and help people, and it also should make us think about how is the greatest number of people ever taken care of. The greatest number of people to be taken care of in any society has been the freer the society, the more people are taken care of. So, yes, we should be concerned about our fellow man. A free society isn't cold and callous. It, to me, is based on the fact that you truly care about your fellow man. Because if you believe that welfareism and socialism and communism and all these things could create great prosperity, it might be a little bit tougher to argue, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and I think this is what's happening in our country today. Not only are the individuals like you who have to work hard and take care of yourselves and would like to have a freer society, but those on the receiving end are getting a little bit nervous, because I think the evidence is out there that this country is flat out broke and that we have to do something. And I believe it all has come from a careless attitude about the rule of law. We take the oath to obey the Constitution. The Constitution is completely ignored. And yet, at the time, if we wanted to correct things, I think if we realized that we got into trouble by not obeying the law, then we'd probably get out of trouble if we just obeyed the law again and followed the Constitution. Is a great document, and it was written not to give authority to the federal government. It was written there to limit the authority of the federal government and not limit rules. If there are to be limits or enforcement of laws and laws of violence, it should be handled at the state level. Believe it or not, under the Constitution, if we were strict constitutionalists, we would not have the federal government involved in our educational system. It would be a state issue alone. I think that would be a pretty good idea. That means we could save all the money we're spending in the Department of Education and use that to bring down our debt and do that. It was mentioned in the introduction about the foreign policy, and it is something that I've thought about for many, many years. And the one thing that I am rather proud of is the fact that I, as one of the candidates now running, get more money from the active military people than all the other candidates put together. Then after I had some second thoughts about that, because at first I thought, well, that's good and somewhat surprised, but then I think, why should I be surprised? I was in the military for 5 years, and that was in the 60s. Believe me, I wasn't very anxious for LBJ to go in and stir up the war and expand the war and prolong the war all undeclared. No, I would say that especially our people in the military, they want to defend this country. That was behind my staying in. Although I was drafted, I stayed in extra because people do want to defend this country. But what's happened to our National Guard and our reserve units today? Are they defending our country? Where are they when the floods come and there are natural disasters? So is our state guard here to help? No, they're usually someplace off fighting a war that's been undeclared and nobody knows what's going to end, and it's bankrupting our country. That's the reason I argue that the troops ought to come home and take care of the people here at home. The founders were astute enough to try to prevent us from doing this. They thought we would be more obedient to the Constitution, because one of their big concerns was the abuse of the military, the British king, the abuse of their military over here and putting their troops in the homes of the colonists. And so they wanted to make sure that the war power was not in the hands of one person. The king too often had this power. So they said this power should be given as close to the people as possible, and therefore